All right, we're back recording. I'm going to hit the share button. We're going to come back into where we were. Sorry about that. So yeah, actively serve on committees, review, and be ready to participate at the board meeting. Make an annual contribution to the organization commensurate with the ability, or and maybe that might be a Linda ad, or make
I think I added that.
Yeah, make the organization. Oh, I love this. I'm going to change that. Make your organization. I think that needs to be both, because I like my, commensurate with ability, or maybe meaningful to you personally. I would change that too. And I love that ad, the top three organizations in your priority. So they should all, when you're in that recruiting. So yeah, we would like, when you create your budget, some people don't create a budget of what they're going to do, philanthropic budget. Perhaps we should be encouraging people to do that more often. Provide leadership to the annual support campaign. That's our community support campaign, which goes to annual giving and any other campaigns held by the organization. That makes sense.
So Rob, excuse me, on that last point, when you talk about provide leadership to the annual support campaign, and you've already talked about the annual contribution in the previous bullet, what are you looking for in terms of leadership for the annual support campaign? Are you looking for activity or more contributions, or what?
Both. When we're going to go over that into detail next week. But all of your, one of the things that I hear consultants say, only have enough board members for the available jobs, and limit your board to I've heard this before, and I've argued in groups with other consultants on this. I don't want to say argue, we've debated that. And I say, if you don't have, make more jobs. And one of the jobs, I believe, is with the annual community support campaign, we need a campaign chairman. I believe that campaign chairman should be, you should be required to be a previous campaign chairman before you're a chair of the board. Obviously, you're not going to do that overnight, right? That's going to take you a few years to achieve all these goals. We need division managers. We need somebody to run the major gift division. We need somebody to run the community gift division. We need people that are the rah-rah spirit people that want to help plan the meetings, and team captains, and then just regular old campaigners. And I think the leadership for this should come from the board. And we want to include leaders that are not on the board in this campaign, because now we are giving, we're having an opportunity to develop new leaders that will be new board members. And we can look at someone and say, hey, Joe over there is just doing a bang up job, man. Let's recruit him to be on the board. This will all make a little bit more sense next week, Danny, when we go into that campaign, because next week's dedicated all to it. And we may have to go week 7 if we get it all done. Where was we at? Strictly adhere to conflict of interest policies. Yes, you should have a conflict of interest policy. There is times your board members need to abstain, and you should have a confidentiality policy, because you're talking about stuff like people's jobs, right? And some of the stuff that you're talking about, some things we'll talk about, we may share with other organizations, and those are best practices kind of things, but nothing personal and nothing confidential to the organization. Let's talk about, look at this. I put time demands. Attend and actively participate in at least 75% of the board meetings. How about that, Linda? And they should be 12 monthly meetings, in my opinion. Last about an hour and a half. We're going to say in there, and this is an example, right? Third Thursday of the month, but you put in whatever you want to put in there. But, that's these are all examples. Attend and actively participate in committee meetings and other related work. And I say that's, a couple hours a month. Attend and actively participate in the annual meeting. That's a couple hours annually. Actively participate and attend the annual community support campaign functions. I put that as 8 hours annually. Now that might go up a little bit if we have special events, but and we're going to talk more about the time demands for the annual support campaign. The idea is to get as many volunteers and leaders as we can, and and develop and distribute the workload amongst everybody so nobody's being overtaxed. And so yeah, anybody that wants to question these demands, let me know, and let's debate them. And jump in, Linda, if you have something you want to add. Meet with potential donors, funders. Same thing, really, to make the case for funding for the organization.
Ron?
Questions, and I put that as an additional 6 hours.
Rob,
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to add, so it was one year that one of the auditors wanted to know why we were meeting every other month. And so I wasn't too sure when I just read 12 monthly board meetings, because the auditors usually say that when you meet too frequently, which means there's something going on with the organization where you have to have the board members meet on a monthly basis. So I don't know what's really a best practice. Is it?
What did the
monthly?
auditors suggest? These are state auditors.
Yeah, like they normally say it's usually quarterly that board members usually meet. And when we said every other month, they were like, well, why? What's going on? Is something I need to know?
Well,
Like it opened a can of worms.
No, I think you need to
Depends
educate
on the
them.
organization. Some organizations, if they're mature and they've been around a while, maybe they only need to meet quarterly, but I find most organizations either monthly
Okay.
or every other month at
Yep.
at the minimum.
And take that opportunity to teach that auditor what really is required of board members. He's thinking the minimum is, and it's like, these people have responsibilities to the community, to these children, way more than what you expect. Whew, I want to talk to that guy.
Yeah, I was like, but no, nothing is going on. It's just that we meet every other month. They're like, sorry, I got scared. Like, oh my God, what do we say?
That's strange, yeah.
Okay, so
I've never heard of an auditor even question that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But
well, once again, government doesn't
if they're
think
state,
like
yeah, government
everybody else.
people are probably think a little differently than nonprofit people do.
Yep.
Probably.
And government could learn from nonprofits, and sometimes we can learn, nonprofits can learn from
Yeah.
government, but it doesn't mean that we can't educate them sometimes too. And so that's a really good opportunity, just like we should educate foundations. I believe every foundation should be making capacity building grants for you. And we're gonna have a foundation training course too. Okay.
I'm thinking on the government lines, you could compare it to a city council or a county commissioners, and they almost always meet monthly at least.
Mhm.
So,
And maybe you cancel one at Christmas, or you cancel one at
yeah,
summer to July, when people are on vacation.
right.
But okay, so financial and resource development expectations. This is a biggie here. Make an annual gift commensurate and significant according to your circumstances to the organization in order to achieve 100% board giving. You've heard me phrase this a few different ways, but I think you're getting the idea. Serve in a leadership role in the annual support campaign, in our community support campaign. Everybody's, board members are leaders, and we're going to get other volunteers to lead and volunteer as campaigners. And those board members expected to recruit other volunteer campaigners and sometimes other leaders to the campaign. And identify and cultivate potential donors for annual giving, special events, and the endowment recognition club. I believe we all should have an endowment recognition club. It may, everybody may only meet annually for that, except for a small committee on the board. And but I think when we talk, to me, the biggest job the board of directors have is that community support campaign and recruitment of their peers and bringing new people on and evaluating how they do. That's the three biggest jobs. And of course, that governance stuff. Sorry. Any comments on that? I'm going to scroll down to, is it done? I guess it's only 2 pages. I thought it was 3 pages. All right. Any comments on this thing? I think. Now we're going to go into this little slide here. Are we still sharing? You see it?
Yep.
we go. I added this little cartoon because I thought it was neat. I don't like, if you can tell, directed donations very much, but I was taught by a mentor of mine, Claire Johnson, many years ago. If a donor gives you a check and tells you to pound a nail in it and hang a picture of George Washington on that check, that's what you should do to it. Perhaps sometimes we should not accept gifts, but that are too restrictive. But I thought this was a cute little slide. We did talk a lot about the difference between charity and philanthropy, and right now I am finishing this week an article for Nonprofit Pro magazine on the subject. And if you want to go into our group, there is a comment thing that Linda made comments and Margie made comments, and there's a couple of people that have been, asking you to define the difference between a culture of charity and a culture of philanthropy. And I'm taking some of your quotes, if you allow me, and we're going to put them in the article. Let's talk about the 4 steps of, and I need to move my little chat heads here because they're in the way of the slide. No, that didn't help. We'll go make all the chat heads go away for a second. Linda, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think, and this we all covered actually, all these next couple of slides we covered in the development plan, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't know if I you didn't make me co-host, did you?
No.
I can't advance the slides, but I want to talk a little bit about the board's role in all 4 of these steps.
There is no co-host, so I'm making you the host. So you got to.
Oh, okay.
You just give it back to me someday.
I will do that.
Yeah, I haven't found the co-host boat. You are now in charge.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. Well.
Can you take the existing slideshow?
I can't now for some reason.
All right, so that's that. Give it back to me and I'll just advance. You tell me what to do.
Oh, okay. Go to the next slide. I think
Okay.
I just want to kind of sum up how the board can get involved in all 4 of those steps. And if you remember from, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, when we talked about the 4 steps that should be in your development plan, the first one was identifying donors. So if you want to flip to that next slide.
Yeah, I'm still trying to reclaim the host thing.
Oh, okay.
It's not, I'm asking.
It doesn't tell me that I'm the host.
Well, I'm asking and I'm going in and it doesn't tell me to reclaim the host. So let's.
Oh, boy, we're having great technology fun today.
Yeah, I
Aren't we?
love it.
All it tells me is that I'm viewing your screen.
All right. So let's see. You are now seeing that, and you wanted this slide. I think that was what you wanted.
Slide 4, right. So identifying donors is something that board members can do. And somebody mentioned this earlier, I think, in some of our comments about asking the board member to identify donors. Well, one of the big mistakes, can you get to the next slide or not?
Sure.
One of the big mistakes that people make is that they ask board members, and there somehow seems to be this magic number of 15, and they say, oh, all board members are supposed to give us 15 names of people that can give us money. Well, I guarantee you that nobody ever responds to that, because you're giving them a blank piece of paper and their mind is about as blank as that piece of paper. So they're not going to think of 15 people. I mean, I do this professionally. And if somebody said to me, write down 15 people you can ask to give to this organization, my mind would be blank too. But what I use is a brainstorming form. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this during the development planning part, but if anybody wants that brainstorming form, I can probably send it to Rob, and he can.
Yeah, let's use that as we'll send it out with the replay.
So I'll send
Is that
that out.
is that the form, Linda?
Maybe I did send it out. Did I give you already the brainstorming form?
No, I don't believe so.
If I didn't, I'll
Is that the one? I use something similar to that, and it's like your plumber, your electrician, your broker,
that's exactly it.
And then you start thinking it through names and
Right.
yeah.
But what I recommend is don't do this like just hand the board members that form and say bring it back or email it back. but do it as a group exercise where at a board meeting, you're brainstorming on who knows who, because a lot of times they play off each other and one board member will say, oh, well, I can ask my insurance agent, I have my house and my car insured. And then another board member will say, hey, I use that same agent. I insure my business, my car, my house, my boat, you know.
And
So
in that
everybody,
case, I always say they should either go together or figure out which one is
yes,
the best relationship.
for sure. That's exactly what it is. But I think, you know, board members do have connections that you probably don't realize they have. And I may have given you some examples of this when we talked about this before, but I guarantee if you do this exercise as a group, you will uncover some relationships that you never dreamed existed before between your board members. And also do it with your staff members and do it with your volunteers, but the board especially, since that's what we're talking about today, is really important that you get them involved in identifying the connections. And then on the next slide where we talked about cultivation, that can be making in-person visits, phone calls. Whoops. Oh, we got
Stewardship.
that.
Am I
We
at the
missed
right?
cultivation.
Yeah, hang
For
on. I'm
some
gonna move my-
reason, we missed cultivation.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm gonna
not
miss
sure what happened there. Our slideshow's getting away from us today.
making the connection. I don't see cultivation.
Oh.
Did we
hmm.
forget that one?
Well, I thought it was in there, but maybe not. Well, let me just talk about cultivation. What board members can do is they can invite people to their home for a cocktail party, not to be asking for money at those events. You're just trying to build the relationships. They can help you set up one-on-one calls with people that they know. And a board, maybe and a staff member go together, or a board member and another volunteer to go together. But as Rob said, there should always be a volunteer, either a board member or another volunteer on every major gift ask. But they should also be involved in helping you cultivate those people. So what can they do to cultivate donors? And most board members are going to feel a lot better about brainstorming for ideas and cultivating donors because they don't have to make an ask. They're just opening the doors and introducing you. They can bring somebody in to have a tour if that's appropriate in your organization, or bring them in to have lunch with the executive director. And then eventually, though, you do want to get them involved in soliciting, and that can be either through the annual appeal that we talked about, but if you can get to the slide that talks about soliciting, I think that
Excuse
should
me,
be.
if you're watching, my neighbor is throwing oranges at me while I speak.
Oh, no. Hey, well, send some over here. At least they're not pineapples. That could probably hurt a little bit.
Yeah,
when
no,
you're-
that would hurt. The oranges, I smelled orange everywhere. I don't know where they went.
But board members can get involved with soliciting, and they should be getting involved, either making personal visits, they can make phone calls for donors, they can help with direct response, they can sign letters that you're sending out to people that they know. And there's so many things that board members can do that actually do involve soliciting, but a lot of times board members feel reluctant to do this. So teaming them up, maybe have two board members, or a board member and another volunteer, or a board member and a staff member go make the call together. So they're making a joint ask. A lot of times people feel more comfortable with that.
Mhm.
And then finally, the stewardship piece of this, that's an important part of this too. It's often we talk about the last step and the first gift, but the first step and the next gift. So what can board members do to work with these donors? Well, one of the things that I recommend is a board thankathon, where you get your list of donors together. And if you have a whole lot of donors, you might want to separate them and say, well, we're going to call board members over 1,000, or donors that have given over 1,000, or donors that have given over $100, whatever amount is appropriate. But have the board members come into a board meeting maybe 30 minutes before the board meeting starts. And you give everybody a list of names and they take their cell phones and maybe they go into a little cubicle somewhere. And they're just calling to thank donors, not ask them for money. And you would be surprised, first of all, that the donors respond to this because they're just amazed that somebody took the time to call them for a gift that maybe they don't think is that important. But it also gives your board members an opportunity to speak one-on-one with a donor. And when they do that, they come back and come into that board meeting and say, wow, that was really great. I was talking to this donor and she told me why she gives to this organization and that she really appreciated the call. And boy, talking to donors isn't really as bad as I thought it was. So when you do ask them to go out and ask for money, they feel much more comfortable because they've started getting into that culture of philanthropy that we were talking about. And then I think also the last thing I want to mention is that you need to educate your board members. And some of the education is on the next slide, because board members sometimes tend to want you to do things that are not the most effective way to raise money. Most board members, first of all, will say, oh, we'll just go out and write grants or just do special events, because that means that gets them off the hook and they don't have to do anything. So it's important to understand which methods are the most effective, and your board members need to understand this. We went over this also 2 weeks ago, but just so they know that those in-person solicitations are the most effective way to raise money. And you're not going to raise a whole lot of money on direct mail, and even telephone fundraising is better, but it's not as effective. So don't let your board members take the easy way out and say, well, just write grants. That's where that's the most effective. And special events in most cases only raise about 50 cents for every dollar that's raised, because it costs 50 cents to put on most events. So I think, you know, if you get board members that all they want to do is special events and grants, show them that if they go out and see people in person, you're only going to be spending. And if you're in a community, a small community, you probably won't even spend this much, because this takes into account sometimes traveling to see your donors. So if you're living in a very isolated and small community, and that's where all your donors are, you're probably only going to spend 5 cents for every dollar that you raise. So I think if board members are educated more about fundraising, which is one of the things we're going to be doing in our board member training, I think that'll really help a lot. So I think that's about it for me, Rob.
A couple of things I want to add to this. Remember, and let's go back to this slide here. Okay, where it talks about your what is most effective. And I don't have a slide for this. I'll make one, I promise, someday. Remember what I said previously, and it was a study I read, nothing I came up with, that volunteers are twice as effective face-to-face than they think they are when making when asking somebody to make a contribution. And they are 2 times less effective via email. You're more effective on phone than email. And perhaps some of these slides were made before we had email. Some of Linda's slides and I are a little bit old.
Well, direct mail and email are probably pretty close.
Yeah, I imagine they're pretty good. Some people would respond better to direct mail and some people respond better to email. You got to do all of it, right? But
right.
The one thing that nobody knows now, and I'm sure after the pandemic we'll have a study on this, somebody will fund that, and that is how effective are we on Zoom meetings compared to in person and telephone and all that other stuff. I imagine we're probably better than telephone, and certainly not as good as that 65% in-person solicitation rate. And the other thing I wanted to go back in here, well, I don't know where it was in there, but I'm going to stop this or pause this thing for a minute and come back to everybody here in the group. when Linda, remember you were talking about where you take that form and it says, your plumber, your stockbroker, your banker, your insurance people, and you're coming up with names, and it should be done in a group setting so other people can say, oh yeah, I know that's my uncle or whatever that is. I believe that we should take all of our donors, your existing donors, and have that same conversation with your board. And especially if they've only given by the mail or email or on social media, and we sit down and everybody's looking at the same list, and we say, and we find out who has a relationship with your existing donors. And then we can move them out of that passive level of giving, which is they receive a mail and write a check, and we put them into the annual campaign, this community support campaign, where a volunteer and maybe a staff member or maybe two volunteers go out and ask that person, meet with them face to face, thank them for their gift, tell them why you support the organization, and ask. And theoretically, we would like that person that's asking to be asking at the other person at the same level of giving, right? It's really hard for me to give $100 a year and go out and ask somebody else to give 1,000. But and as I said before, you should have a specific amount you're going to ask for. I think it was the old Rockefeller approach that they said, we'd like to ask you for $1,000 gift. It could be paid over the next 10 months, and $100 a month. We can do ACH. You may have in your mind you'd like to give more, but this would be a meaningful gift, and ask them, and then shut up.
And I think, Rob, one of the reasons that it's important for your board members and your volunteers to give is because you said it's hard, very difficult. If I give $100 to ask for 1,000, but if I give 0, it's impossible for me to ask for anything.
Exactly. Yep.
So if I haven't given, nobody's gonna give it to me.
And I take that more for major gifts, right? If I'm asking somebody for $50,000, I should be given at that level.
Right.
The smaller levels, it was all this. I mean, this is, take someone with a grain of sand, what we're saying. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but at least we have to have a rule. We have to set the bar high. When we set the bar low, it's pretty sad. There is a slide I wanted, you guys can't see this, can you? Let's see, new share.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, you all see it? Okay. And there was a slide I wanted to put up here. Let's see. Come on, baby. All right. Where is it? There we go. Board solicitation team. Let's talk a minute about this. We're going into overtime. By the way, you will notice that I put 2 hours for this meeting and not 90 minutes like I did at every other meeting, because there is no such thing as 90 minutes for us. The board solicitation team, and this is a team that's going to be on the community support campaign, and we're going to talk more about it next week, but I really think this is something we need to talk about right now, because so the chair of the board solicitation team during the campaign, and people that don't have a campaign should have this as the board solicitation process or committee or whatever it is. I just roll this into the annual campaign, and I believe it should be held in the first 3 months of the year every year. The chair, the team is usually recruited by the board chair in close consultation with the campaign chair. And of course, the campaign director, you'll learn next week, that's the executive director, is the campaign director. You just change your hat for the campaign. And I suggest recruiting an elder statesman or stateswoman for this position that has previously served as the board chair. This is to chair the board solicitation process. The team should only be large enough for each member to call on 4 or 5 board members. Process may overlap at the campaign leadership recruitment, and that's okay, because some of these people will also be campaign leaders. And you should, as I said, conduct your this process early in the year, so they make sure that your organization is their first priority. They're thinking about making a gift that can be paid over the year.
Rob, I think this is important in what we're talking about earlier. This board solicitation is a job that belongs to the board. The executive director should not be the one asking all the board members to contribute. Maybe maybe the chairperson has to be solicited by somebody. So that might be the executive director, but this is not the executive director's job to have to go beat up all the board members and ask them to make a gift. That's the
Amen.
board's job.
Yeah, and so how I see this is the board solicitation chair should be somebody other than the board chair, and it's the executive director and the board chair that go together to recruit that person to be the solicitation chair and give them their, and once again, it's the ask is coming from the board chair, the executive director or the founder or whoever is just there to support that person. Now, sometimes they have this thing where they just don't want to ask, right? And so maybe that's when you two team up at the beginning, and the executive director is the person. I hate to see executive directors make the ask. I want it to be the volunteer. And if you look at it, as I've said before, one of the goals of a community support campaign is to go out to tell your story to as many people in your community or in the nation or in the world as possible. The best form of advertising is word of mouth advertising. So really their goal is to tell somebody about the organization that they care about. If they say no, that's okay. Because you're giving the best form of advertising in the world on demand is word of mouth advertising. You say, hey, that's okay. You know, if they say no, and remember, I always say, make the ask and then shut up. The first person that talks loses. That goes to old salesman training, right? But it is really, if they say no, ask them to come. That's okay. Maybe you can come into one of our events or come take a tour of what we're doing here and you know, watch what the programs we're doing for kids. And if they recruit, you know, sometimes if they say no to all that stuff, then it might be, you know, an exit interview might be in order. But usually you're not going to get a no to everything unless they're just like, they don't want to be a part of your organization. Okay, cool. I'm glad I got to educate you about what we're doing. Next. Make it fun, make it a educational process. I don't like it when people reduce it and say, well, you just introduced me and I'm the executive director and I make the ask. No, I want to see that, or especially the development director who may only be there a couple of years. The relationship needs to be volunteer to volunteer.
I'm just looking at the comments. Chad, I have to tell you, I had crabapple fights when I was a kid too. I lived in Pennsylvania.
I missed that comment.
We don't have crab apples in Nevada.
Say, them suckers hurt if you get hit in the ribs.
Oh, right. Him throwing out. Did you see him throwing oranges at me behind me?
That's when he made the comment when you were getting oranges thrown at you.
We have crab spiders here on Maui, don't they, Courtney? And this is the time of year that crab spiders come out. And that is the spider that I don't know how he could do it, but he could spin a web from house to house. And it's usually from, you know, or from car to car, and you walk through and it's in your mouth. Crab spiders are amazing little guys.
As long as I don't throw crab spiders at each other or don't throw crabs at each other.
Yeah, crabs.
That'd just be really painful.
Yeah.
I just was going through some of my notes, and I want to, and I think we covered everything. These are notes that I took from last week. And I'll say this again. This is I'm just looking at my highlighted stuff. Remember, don't set minimums. The three, you know, the three, and this is something I'm going to talk about in the article I'm writing. Minimums become maximums. Kai's heard me say this so many times he's about to puke, but it's the truth, and it's just so easy for us all to stand up for this board solicitation process and say, all right, it's that time of year again. Everybody write me $100 check, and you pass the hat around and they all put it in. You're reducing yourself to 10 cup transactional. It needs to be personal. It needs to be thought out in advance, just like board recruitment needs to be thought out in advance. You just don't show up someday and say, okay, 3 of you guys are leaving. Who's going to replace them? It's something that's really, you know, the board solicitation process is a once a year easy thing. Recruitment process is all year, really. And then we get that and make that pledge, and they can. In the olden days, we didn't have ACH and all these different options for people that could go in, and now we've got Network for Good and all these things where people can just make recurring gifts. But when most nonprofits talk about a recurring gift, they think of somebody going to their website or going to social media and clicking on a button said, make this recurring. That's how you start the process. Maybe that might be a way to acquire donors, but that is not what we talk about when we say a recurring gift. What we talk about a recurring gift is we personally talk to them. They make a pledge that can be paid off through a variety of these vehicles. And then you can maybe go in and somehow put them into that Network for Good or whatever that CRM program you have, and where it automatically deducts from their checking account or their credit card every month. The olden days, we would the back office would send out bills, and some people still want to be sent out that bill, and that should be when you see the pledge card next week, that'll be an option. You know, do you want to be billed? Do you want to do this? You want to ACH? How do we want, the mechanics of how do we fulfill that pledge? And there's a thing called pledge shrinkage. This happens with capital campaigns too. I believe annual gift campaigns, we want to go back and meet them every year. Some people will tell you multiple year pledge. Why would I if I am asking you for $5,000 and make that multiple years, that just means I'm lazy, because I might want to come back and ask for $7,000 next year and $10,000 the year after that. So, but when we talk about capital campaigns, we're usually talking about a multiple year gift, and we're going to meet with our lead donors, and they, okay, so you still need to make an annual gift. You can't cut out your annual giving and add your capital giving. That needs to be over and above your annual giving. And so those are all strategies. And yes, there is a thing called pledge shrinkage. People make commitments, and for whatever reasons, maybe, hardships and stuff, they don't necessarily, they can't fulfill their pledge, God forbid. And so there's a thing about, here's the campaign goal, but we may budget here, right? If that makes sense. What other good things do we have in here? Questions? Come on, this is your time to jump in, everybody. Ask questions. I would love to hear your personal stories of and any questions you might have.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Chad.
So I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and we were looking at maybe having a local musician come in, kind of starting to hit the big time. And I said, well, I know you've posted a lot on her Facebook page. Do you have a connection with her? So she said, oh, yeah, well, I'm in one of her bands when she's local. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she directed me to the booking agency. Hopefully we'll see how much they'd want to charge to come down the interstate for us.
Hopefully they'll donate their time.
Well, I don't hold back
and those up and coming local leaders, Courtney here, it was Willie K. This last weekend I was with Uncle George Kahanamuko, the slack keyed guitarist. Courtney knows all these people, and these people did and well, Willie K passed away, God bless him, but these people do volunteer their time to help nonprofits in the community. And those are cool things. If we ever go back to special events, I love, or next week we'll talk about this. If I forget to talk about this, your community support campaign's got to have a kickoff meeting and a victory meeting, and it's best to do it in person. And then we have report meetings in the middle for everybody in all the divisions. But I love to go to the local high school and get the their whatever, their band, their symphony, whatever they do, and have them and ask them to come and perform. How do you include those kids in the community? Because that's huge. We all watched the Super Bowl last weekend. I'm a Ram fan.
No, we didn't all watch it. I didn't.
Okay.
I could care less about football.
Linda and
Sorry.
I had this conversation, and I prefer amateur sports and college sports over pro sports, but I do like baseball pro. But okay, so I watched the Super Bowl, and if you noticed at the beginning, if you did watch it, that they had the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles perform. How cool was that to see? And by the way, I thought it made Inglewood and LA and Long Beach. We had Snoop and Billie Jean King from Long Beach throwing the coin toss. I thought it made LA and the local area look really good. And to see the the youth orchestra of Los Angeles, these are inner city kids playing all those instruments with that lake behind them. Oh, made me cry. And the Rams won. That was even better. By the way,
We have some East Coasters here. I don't know.
I know. I'm waiting for those guys to jump
I
in.
think Chad just scratched you off his Christmas list. What he wrote.
All right, our Cincinnati fans are anyhow. So when I was a kid, we all dressed up as Roman Gabriel, and we all had our Rams uniforms, and we played in the street, and then the Rams left and went to, my whole adult life we had no football in our area when I'm living in Long Beach, and except for college stuff that we'd go see. And Long Beach State cut out their football after George Allen was coach. Right after George Allen stepped down, they cut it. And so now I moved to Maui 6 years ago, and we got 2 teams in LA. How screwed up is that?
Really? They have 2 football teams.
Got the Chargers out there now too, right?
I don't know. We have a football team here, but I can't even tell you. Oh, the Raiders.
Oh yeah. By the way, I went to one Raider game. I'm not a Raider fan.
I'm not a football fan, obviously.
I went to one Raider game. I had to pay some guy $20 so he wouldn't steal my car. But he protected it. It was still there when I got out.
Oh my.
All right, let's get back to board development, fundraising. I'm 3 hours away from, Chad says, from any pro team. He'll take what he can get. Here in Hawaii, high school sports is huge, huh, Courtney? Better than I've seen in,
It
in
is
probably
in
a lot of
Texas,
small
I
towns.
think, too.
Small towns support their high school athletes better. And if you go see some of these volleyball games and baseball games and football games, there's a lot of Polynesian people in pro sports, especially football, and they're coming out of Hawaii, and it's pretty. I love how they support youth sports and the high school stuff. All right, let's get back to board development. Any other questions, comments? Dan, you good?
Yeah, good stuff. And some of the things that you talked about, I'm involved in some committees, and we try to follow those strictures in terms of the board rules, but we do that in a committee level, and it helps out. Everybody contributes and everybody participates, and we share information and do a lot of brainstorming about who we might be able to reach out to, either for a sponsorship or for a contribution. And so I can vouch for the fact that all those things work really well.
Yeah, on that development committee should be led by and include board members, but by all means, bring people onto that committee that is not board members. In fact, any committee you could think, maybe your governance committee should be all board members, but any other committee, let's bring people from the community, invite them to join that. And that's a road to get them, maybe if you like them, on the board.
Yeah, best place to find new board members.
Jason, anything you got to add or questions? Jump in there.
This is really informative and great, so I appreciate it. I am good though.
Okay.
So
I'm kind of curious, Jason. You mentioned that the one person on your board who is not a pharmacist, did they bring her on for a reason? Did she have some talent in fundraising? Is that?
yeah, so just so everyone knows, so as a reminder, I work for an organization that is made up of pharmacists, and so so this one individual in particular, she's on the board, and maybe it's because she's not confident because she's not a pharmacist herself, so she doesn't really want to share her opinion. But from what I understand, there was somebody from her firm. She works in strategic communications, healthcare strategic communications. So somebody from her firm had a director position on our board a couple of years ago. That person rotated off, and this woman worked at the same firm, took that person's place. Got it. So there is a tie into healthcare because she works in strategic communications for healthcare institutions, but so far that hasn't really panned out to any sort of connections that we could use, but but there are other ways that we could utilize her skills, such as social
Right.
media communications
Yeah.
and
I was
things
just
like
going
that.
to suggest that I sit on a committee for an organization. It's the Addiction and Recovery Committee. And almost everybody else on this committee is either a licensed social worker that deals with addictions and recovery, or it's somebody who has a personal story to tell. Like one man, for example, is raising his not his granddaughter, his niece's child, because his niece overdosed and she had this young child. And I feel like I'm on this committee and I'm not sure why, but I offered to do things like they're making a presentation to UNLV next week. And I said, I can put together the PowerPoint if you all give me the data that you want in this, like statistics on overdosing. And I just learned something from Stephanie today that I am going to take to them, because one of the things they're doing is describing vocabulary that's used. And from Stephanie, I learned that you don't call somebody an overdose if they accidentally took a substance. I wrote that down and I'm gonna let them know about this.
They
So
thought they were taking something else. And
yeah,
it was,
yeah,
that's poisoning.
yeah. And that word has not come up with this group. So even though these are all professionals in the area. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to pass that along to the group.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's one of the things that we are trying to do is change. Like, I think that's why things haven't changed or progressed more, is because we're using the wrong terminology and it has the wrong type of stigma on it.
Well, that's exactly what they're trying to do, is get people to understand the proper language. But that word did not come up, so I'm going to raise it.
Well,
yes.
No.
And because it's too easy to just dismiss it as government and as a society and say, well, they knew what they were doing and they knew the risks. And
Right, yeah.
and let's face it, even if they overdose on something, they know what it is. It's a disease. It's not some,
Mhm.
All right. Good stuff. Courtney, you digging this stuff down there? You're getting excited. We're going to talk about how we're going to.
Oh, there she is. I thought we lost you, Courtney.
Yeah, no, Courtney's the only other person that's got herself coming in, on the screen. And so Paige, Marissa, and by the way, I was going to say that it might just be that your board member Jason is shy and it may have an awful lot to talk about. I just might, it might be like Marissa is real shy and doesn't want to get on the screen, and I have to drag it out of her, but she's smart and dedicated, and I got to make her come out of her mask sometime. Paige, any comments on this?
No, I'm pretty much absorbing. I think I've learned a lot. I mean, really put a fire under me. As I expressed last week, I want to be pretty low profile to a certain extent. And, we did do a email at the suggestion of my development board volunteer. And it didn't go very well. It was just to our Triple L Ranch horseback riders. And so I'm curious about that and why that was. It was pretty nicely done. It was beautiful. She did a lot of work on it. So I'm learning a lot.
That was a letter.
We don't have a big. Yeah, it was the letter that went out. We did a MailChimp mailing to just
So it was an
people
email
who had subscribed to Triple L Ranch news and stuff. So it was about 1,000 recipients. One person donated. It was $100, so that was okay. 1% of 1,000 so I was
That's
excited.
about
Okay, we got
average for
$100.
male acquisition.
Yeah, so I wasn't heartbroken. I told her, that's interesting. But I'm very much targeted towards the in-person meetings. I've always kind of been that person to
You're good at it.
set these capital campaigns and go after individuals to get behind the project and to continue to contribute towards it. And for me, I think it really depends. She did teach me something really important, is going after funders who have a emotional attachment to what you're doing. Jason is in pharmacy, and that could have a lot to do with many different avenues of health and healthcare and things. Courtney is, with the Boys and Girls Club, and kind of
Big brothers,
similar to
big
what we're doing,
sisters.
but different as well.
So there-
But so
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think that really sitting down and thinking about who would be my targeted individuals to either bring on as board members. This is going to sound horrible because I've done a lot of public speaking and shows in New York and stuff, but at this stage in my life, I don't really like people. That's why I live out. That's why I live out here in the boonies, I love my horses, but I've just, and I have an interesting story, but I had told this woman, look, I don't want to do fundraising. That I'm not going to spend 90% of my time working on fundraising. I will do meetings. I will do events. I will get people to write me a check because I'm very passionate about this. But you need to step up and produce these people you keep telling me that you have in your pocket that are interested in my type of project. So I think it's important for my small project, which isn't cheap, it's going to cost quite a bit, but is to find people that are interested in what we're going to do, either with horses or saving children or abuse or sex trafficking or protecting the land, and all those levels. And it could start, I have a few names of people I've connected with here that I think I could entice, but I've been waiting for other people to do it. So I'm
Rob,
no longer going to wait.
should we tell her that if she's speaking with passion and getting people to write a check, that she is fundraising, or should we keep that a secret?
I know. But what I mean by that is I don't want to be stuck in the office, doing this stuff. My passion is behind helping these kids. My passion is to be on the ground with them, with the horses, and being outside. I'm in the office too much as it is, but so I've learned a lot. I'm listening. I turn off my camera because I just want to kind of focus on what everybody's saying instead of looking at people's faces. I have to focus. So I listen and I hear a lot. And, there's a woman who lives right up the road from me who's very passionate about this area. And she was in finance in Los Angeles. So I'm going to approach her to get on with my board because she's just she'd be great at fundraising.
Well,
she got a road put in here. She drives people nuts till they give them what she wants. And so I think she's excellent.
but you've got to engage.
I don't want to do that. So
you got to.
I'm targeting her in a good way.
And okay, so I'm gonna break this down a little bit. Paige, can you hear me? And Chad, I see your hand. And I apologize, Chad, for my Rams comments. I won't get political, but then I went on the Rams. You took your biggest donor, and she wrote you a check for how much, by the way? Your board member, redhead.
Okay, so she didn't write the check. She was going to match funds up to $5,000.
Okay.
But she'll probably still do that because there's a video that we need to make, and I'm having my meeting with the county in March, our preliminary meeting, and she did emailed me yesterday morning asking if I wanted this actress who's a big Instagram, has a huge Instagram following. Did I want her to do a thing, you know, to get people to raise money? I'm like, yeah, like, come on. You know, she could bring potentially a lot of money. She has significant followers who contribute to another one of her programs. And she's also on my board of advisors. So, you know, pushing them when they have time, when I have their ear, organizing meetings with them is a great idea. I think it would be excellent to do a brainstorm with them and say, look, are you guys invested or not? And I want to get this show on the road, you know.
Don't.
But yeah, I do listen.
I don't want. I'm going to break this down. So let me chalk for a minute, because it shouldn't be you bitching at them. It should be you in giving them
Oh.
a task and engaging them. And please
Yeah.
excuse me if I sound like I'm picking you apart, but I am a little bit, because you've got a gal that said, I'll match up to 5,000. And you went to and you did a step one, which is okay. We sent a letter out and said, we got a challenge match, but you are good on social media page, but I haven't seen you post anything about this on your social media personal page. And you got to have
Well,
social.
because we want, yeah. I will probably do that on social media, but this was a different campaign.
And well, it's a challenge grant. Basically, she's issued a challenge and you raise 5,000 and I'm going to match it. So there's a $10,000 campaign. So now this is a campaign. And yeah, an email is important, and and social media is important. And you having that your Facebook and Insta and whatever those things are that you guys use for your organization, Courtney. That's why it's important for you to be on Facebook a little bit more, so you know what your organization's doing and you're kind of pumping that in. And now, you know, there's a whole campaign we're talking about. It's your first $10,000 campaign. Take those people on that list and let's go through it personally and say, I know that person. Let's call. And then we start calling these people. How many of those people on your list are on Maui that you can meet with face to face?
Well, this
And
was just a
some
campaign
rhetorical
targeted
questions,
for,
by the way. These are, I'm not
Yeah.
expecting you to answer, but I'm just saying you can't send out one email and expect results for somebody they've never heard of this organization before. There needs to be a little education, and there needs to be a, you know, thank God you've got one person now that responded. And so you've got one donor you can develop a relationship with. But I know there's other people on that $1,000 list. And you can say, okay, these people we're going to hit with direct mail and email, and hit them again and hit them again and hit them again. And these people, we're going to separate that and we Zoom them. And these people we're going to call, and these people we're going to meet face to face with. And then each person, what you did with Redhead, do it with each one of those people. Okay, you and me, Redhead, we're going to go out and we're going to call this lady and have a Zoom meeting with her. And we're going to tell her about it and show her how passionate. You tell her you pledged $5,000 and ask her to join you. And ask her to give her 3 things that you ask them to do. What's the worst they'll do?
I was kind of surprised. Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I do talk about the project to all of our guests, and this first letter was out to just Triple L Ranch people who've ridden here, and in the last year and a half. And so, because I have a nice detailed list, we didn't before that, but so I was kind of surprised because people always say, "Oh yeah, send us info, we're going to contribute," and we had one person. So I was a little disappointed, but you know, maybe we can hit them again later with a different thing. It was a Valentine's Day.
Hey, thank you. We've got one donor out of that list.
Yeah.
And so we're 100 way.
No, I've already I already contacted them. Yeah, I already said thank you and stuff. But you know, I was just surprised. We get a lot of wealthy people here. So I've also decided to create a QR code that goes directly to our donation page, so that when you hear.
Somebody posted one of those in our Facebook group today, and I said, Usually we don't allow people to fundraise in our Facebook group because we're 650 fundraisers. We can't all be hitting each other up. But I said, I'm leaving this stand because I want to hear people talk about this QR code fundraising. And I don't know anything about it. I'm curious how effective it is.
So yeah, it's interesting. I want to see too, but it's something I could just hand a little card to them. They can, because we always give free t-shirts to our riders. So, you know, we give them a little card and they can just click that. It goes straight to, we also have a little armband thing that they'll put on their wrist and they can just tap, you know, show their friend, look at this cool band, and they tap it and it opens our funding page. So those are two of the things that we're gonna start working on, getting those done, because those, I don't believe those are going to bring in significant amounts of money, but they'll bring in some money. You know, right now we have to, I have a startup amount that I need to get in play, you know, by the end of March. And so, yeah, so that's kind of putting a fire under me. And I have a whole nother email list. I have Facebook, I have all this stuff, but this targeted email was a Valentine's Day thing, you know, just for our guests. And it was kind of a, you know, I said, okay, we'll do this. You know, she wants to do an event. And I'm like, okay, COVID restrictions are changing. And I think that could be okay. She wants to do it in Los Angeles with this actress. And I think that would be fine. Yeah, I don't want to put the money into it. People always get the wrong idea. They're like, you have all this money. I'm like, no.
Let them put the
I
money.
have a
into
lot
it.
of land,
Right.
you know,
Hey, Rob,
but I don't have any money.
QR code.
I'm sorry, what was that? I think it was Kaya said something.
Yeah, can I add something on the QR code?
Sure, go ahead.
Like you, I didn't know much about it, did some research, and then amongst our group, we're considering creating a small tabletop advertisement on the restaurants or concessions. We'll pick a strategic, and that tabletop will have a picture of our capital campaign, a brief blurb, and then have the QR code and send people straight to that page. So that's what we're trying to do with the QR code.
Yeah, I could see the benefit of the QR code. To me, that's donor acquisition.
It's
And
very
once you
easy,
get
and
that donor,
especially
then-
for young people,
Yeah.
they like it.
Yeah, to me, that's still donor acquisition. And then we take it and personalize it once they've given that one time on that QR code. We don't want to leave them. We don't want to leave them on email, QR code, or direct mail. We want to get them out of that and get them to something more personal and develop them on the road up that pyramid of giving. Two things I wanted to comment on. Well, one that I remember now is you said you don't want to be behind a desk and in the office. The secret to fundraising is getting out from behind the desk and out of the office. That is the secret. That's why I hate being behind the desk. I want to meet with people personally. I want to get out and develop relationships. I want to tell them what I'm passionate about. I love being in front of boards personally. So that, yeah, and if you're an executive director, too many times we think our job is 9 to 5 behind this desk, and 50% of your job needs to be out having lunch with these people and meeting with them. And
I want to be working with kids.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. I want to work with kids. That's what I want to do. I want to help these kids. I would be with the horses and, you know, stuff like that. But, you know,
I don't
if
like to
have
write, but I have to
will
do it. I'm sorry, I'm picking on you a little bit, Paige, but thank you. I'm going to come out. You're going to feed me burgers and horseback rides, and we're going to work on this stuff until we get ready for that capital campaign. Chad, I'm sorry I cut you off earlier. We going 410. Do you want to have the parting shot here?
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things so you'll lay off Paige for a little bit. So the first thing is when we had our karaoke night event last week, I was talking to a guy and told him, you know, we're doing a cancer fundraiser. And he said, well, I've had 3 different types. And we were going through it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I started talking to him and I saw him yesterday again. And I got their email to keep in touch with him. And I found out his wife's one of the bigwigs in town. So I'm like, oh, we'll put her on the list and keep them involved. So, you know, that was just kind of a fun chance meeting. And to Paige's comment, I sometimes don't like people either. I think that's important. I think that's one of the things about being a nonprofit is you want to say stuff and you kind of have to keep flowery. But we do events, and I have, amongst other things, we sell ribbon pins and bracelets. Now we have these little 2-inch metal ribbon pins that different colors that we sell off. and had a event, and I had it set up, and this lady comes over, and she's like, "Oh, you want $4 for these little pins? That's crazy." And all I could do was just not say, "Oh, so you've never had anybody in your family with cancer, huh?" But I kind of kept that to myself. So, I mean, some people just don't get it sometimes, I guess.
I have a hard time filtering that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it took a while to get rid of that one.
Yeah. Shrug it off and move on. I guess the point I was trying to say is sometimes we're all going to have to reach out of our, if I don't care what we're in, for anybody to succeed in anything, we got to reach out of our comfort zone sometimes and do things that are uncomfortable. And that's how we grow. If we don't reach out of our comfort zone and do things that sometimes are scary and uncomfortable, we're just stagnant. We're not growing, and we're not learning, and we're not achieving great things. Everybody here has an awesome mission to achieve great things. I encourage you, your homework this week is step out of your comfort zone. Tell us how you're going to do it. And Linda Lysakowski is going to send out that, what do we call that form, that worksheet?
Brainstorming form.
Yes, thank you. We're going to, and it's
Yeah.
going to, just, it's a brainstorming session. So you, in a Zoom or in a committee meeting or in a board meeting, we can all talk about it. Once again, board members, we're not going to recruit them in a meeting. It's all face-to-face with a couple of people. You team up on them. But that brainstorming session should be done with everybody in the room. Go ahead and send me the deck and send me that thing, Linda, and I'll send it out with the replay. I hope the replay works since I got cut off here. Where it might be 2 replays. And Courtney, I will see you on Friday. Paige, I'm going to come polish your boots because I didn't mean to pick on you there. I'm just trying to, I'm encouraging you there. I'm pushing you to get out of that comfort zone to achieve great things. You've done it. You can do it. And you have a tremendous social media following. I feel bad that you're not educating me on social media about all the cool things you're doing. All right. I love you guys. I will see you next week. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Putting
Thank
up with
you.
me. And next week, we will continue, and we're going to dive deep into that community support campaign. We're going to make a community support campaign. It'll be fun.
So your homework is to figure out where we have a central meeting at.
What's that?
I said your homework is to figure out where we can have a central meeting at.
Yeah, y'all guys are all flying to Maui, right?
No, I didn't think you were going to fit the bill on that one.
You got to raise some money. I am going to be, by the way, Kai, you're still here and at the IHOP. You're driving through, all the time. You're driving through Vegas. At some point in time, I'm going to fly to California, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to fly to Vegas first, meet with Linda. So maybe that's going to be the thing. We'll all meet in Vegas.
Okay, we can do a Raiders game.
Well, I'll bring a book to read. I did that once, went to a professional, it was a baseball game, and I took a book to read because baseball is even worse than football. It's like watching paint dry.
I like baseball.
No, they're
Okay,
not
we
gonna
can
play
see
this
Penn
year,
and
so-
Teller.
Hey, there you go.
No, they don't appeal to me either. Sorry.
Okay, so Linda
I'm
could stay
just a
home.
stick in the mud. I'll take you to Red Rock Canyon or Valley of Fire, or I'll bring you up to Boulder City.
Aloha,
see the
Dan.
orange
I'm
sheep.
losing
All right, take care. Good night.
All right, thanks, everyone.
All right.
Okay.
I hope
Bye.
everybody at IHOP enjoyed the show. And I will look forward to seeing you all next week at the same bat time on the same bat channel. Aloha.
Okay.
Aloha.
Bye.